Welcome back. Pakistan's Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa says India is trying to divert the world's attention from Kashmir by targeting civilians from across the line of control. During a visit to the line of control on the occasion of Eid al-Fitr, General Bajwa said Kashmir is a disputed territory and any attempt to challenge its status will be responded to with full military might. He said the Pakistan Army is fully prepared to thwart any aggression. General Bajwa said Indian occupation forces can never suppress spirit of Kashmiris who are awaiting a plebiscite under the UN resolutions. Kashmir has been under India's illegal curfew and communications blackout since August last year. As the Muslim world celebrates Eid this year, under the restrictions due to the coronavirus, India took this opportunity to tighten its military siege of occupied Kashmir. Killings, arrests and torture by Indian forces have become a norm in occupied Kashmir. Indian forces imposed strict curfew and deployed troops to prevent people from offering Eid prayers and staging anti-India demonstrations. During the holy month of Ramadan, Indian troops martyred 25 innocent Kashmiris in 472 cordon and search operations. Meanwhile, another civilian injured by Indian troops in Avakadal succumbed to his injuries. Now going to the US, where over 1,100 more people have died from COVID-19, increasing the toll to over 97,000. The global COVID-19 death toll has crossed 342,000 with over 5.3 million infections. More in this report.
Many countries in Europe and Asia ease lockdown restrictions with the lower number of new cases. Latin America has become the new flashpoint of the virus with a particularly alarming situation in Brazil. Brazil registered 965 deaths in 24 hours, taking the toll to 22,013 with over 347,000 infections. Meanwhile, the IMF has called on the governments to learn lessons from China's effective containment measures.
China clearly has been taking very strong actions to combat the pandemic. China was first to take very strong actions and now is in many ways the first to be exiting the crisis. So a lot of valuable lessons to be learned from China's experience.
Worldwide calls of tracing the origins of the virus are growing rapidly. Wuhan Institute of Virology researchers are putting all their energy into tracing the source of SARS virus.
The current consensus of the international academic community is that the virus originated from wild animals, but we still don't clearly know what kind of viruses that all different wild species carry on across the globe, and where the viruses, which are similar to SARS coronavirus 2, are. This is why it needs the cooperation between scientists all over the world to find the answers.
Thailand, for the fourth time in a month, reported no new infections and no new deaths. The country has been maintaining the total to 3,040 confirmed cases and 56 fatalities since the outbreak began in January.
Meanwhile, Pakistan's COVID-19 death toll has risen by 32 to 1,133. The Health Ministry reported over 2,000 cases in the last 24 hours, increasing the tally to 54,601. The ministry said the number of recoveries has surpassed 17,000. It said nearly 13,000 tests were conducted in the past day, bringing the total to over 473,000. With over 21,500 cases, the southern province of Sindh leads in the number. China's Foreign Minister Wang Yi says Washington is pushing relations with Beijing to the brink of a new Cold War. Speaking to reporters, Wang said some political forces in Washington are taking China-US relations hostage. He said China and the US must find a way of peaceful coexistence and mutually beneficial cooperation. Wang said both countries stand to gain from cooperation and lose from confrontation. He said a political virus is spreading in the US and jumping at any opportunity to attack and slander China. Wang said the US must give up its wishful thinking of changing China or stopping Chinese people's historical march towards modernization. He said China will defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity, its legitimate right to development and dignity. In Hong Kong, thousands of protesters have flooded the streets against China's plan to impose national security laws on the city. Police fired tear gas and pepper spray to disperse the demonstrations. Protesters gathered at Causeway Bay chanting, "5 demands, not one less." In the Wan Chai district, protesters tried to block a road, prompting police to fire more tear gas. Earlier, Beijing proposed security legislation for Hong Kong. The move sent a chill through financial markets and drew a swift rebuke from foreign governments. North Korea's Kim Jong-un has vowed to bolster Pyongyang's nuclear capabilities amid stalled denuclearization talks with the U.S. This was revealed after the North Korean leader hosted a military meeting in his first public appearance in 3 weeks. The meeting discussed measures to bolster armed forces and reliably contain military threats from hostile forces. North Korea's state media said the participants also discussed putting strategic armed forces on a high alert operation. Earlier, the U.S. announced it will exit Open Skies Treaty, which allows unarmed surveillance flights over member countries. Moving on, the U.S. has welcomed the Afghan government and Taliban's announcement of a countrywide ceasefire during Eid. U.S. Special Envoy for Afghanistan, Zalmay Khalilzad, said the development offers the opportunity to accelerate the peace process. Khalilzad said the truce should follow the release of remaining prisoners as specified in the Doha deal and reduction in violence by both sides. Meanwhile, Afghan President Ashraf Ghani has appreciated the Taliban announcement of a ceasefire. Ghani said the release of Taliban prisoners will be expedited, kickstarting the process that stopped this month. Earlier, the Taliban had declared a 3-day ceasefire starting today. In Israel, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu says his opponents are trying to oust him unjustly through the corruption trial. Netanyahu said this as he arrived at the Jerusalem court for the start of his corruption trial. The Prime Minister said he is standing firm to face the trial and would continue to lead the country. Netanyahu is the country's first sitting leader to be arraigned, but he denies the charges as a witch hunt. Netanyahu said these investigations were tainted and stitched up from the first moment. The trial starts a week after Netanyahu was sworn back into office as head of a rare national unity government. According to Israeli law, a prime minister charged with a crime is not required to resign. The first 5 tankers loaded with gasoline sent from Iran have reached Venezuela. The move is expected to temporarily ease the South American nation's fuel crunch while defying U.S. sanctions targeting the two countries. Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arrizia said Iran and Venezuela have always supported each other in times of difficulty. In a new relationship between Caracas and Tehran, Iran recently also flew shipments of a key chemical needed to help jumpstart a Venezuelan oil refinery and produce gasoline. The shipments have caused a diplomatic standoff between U.S., Iran and Venezuela, which are under Washington sanctions. Earlier, Iranian President Hassan Rouhani warned of retaliatory measures against U.S. if Washington caused problems for the tankers. Libya's UN-recognized government says Khalifa Haftar's forces have hit the capital Tripoli with a rocket attack. In a statement, a government spokesman said the attack targeted Mitiga International Airport, but it gave no information on injuries or deaths. The latest round of violence came a day after government forces retook 3 strategic military camps from Haftar's forces in the south of the capital. The UN-backed government spokesman said the military retook Hamza al-Sawarikh and Yarmouk camps as part of its operations against militia. We're taking a short break now, but stay tuned for more news. Welcome back. As the U.S. death toll from COVID-19 nears 100,000, the New York Times filled the entire front page of its Sunday edition with the names, ages, and brief details of some of the virus victims. The paper said it drew from 1,000 obituaries and notices in hundreds of U.S. newspapers to highlight the pandemic's individual human toll. It said the move intended to convey the vastness and variety of the tragedy. The U.S. death toll stands at more than 97,000, by far the highest in the world. This week, 11 states, including Alabama, Arkansas, Minnesota, North Dakota, New Hampshire, reported a record number of new COVID-19 cases. A huge warehouse fire engulfed a section of San Francisco's iconic FISHERMAN'S Wharf on Saturday. Fire crews battled the massive 4-alarm blaze at a warehouse that contained a large fish processing operation on Pier 45. At one point, it threatened a historic World War II cargo ship that was docked at the pier. Firefighters were able to save the SS Jeremiah O'Brien, one of only 2 remaining so-called Liberty cargo ships from the war and a popular local attraction. The cause of the fire is under investigation. Muslims in major parts of the world are celebrating the Eid al-Fitr today after the sighting of the Shawwal moon. This year's occasion comes during unprecedented lockdowns and curfews in some countries amid COVID-19 pandemic. In a tweet, Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan wished Eid to Kashmiris living under Indian oppression.
Prime Minister said he admires Kashmiris for their patience and courage during the inhumane lockdown imposed by New Delhi. Earlier, Khan observed everyone in Pakistan to observe the occasion in a subdued manner due to the pandemic and the recent plane crash tragedy. He said SOPs in place to contain the virus must be observed at all times. Muslims in occupied Jerusalem, Egypt, Jordan, Syria, Qatar, and Lebanon are also celebrating Eid today. In India, however, the Eid will be celebrated tomorrow as the moon was not sighted yesterday. Traditional festivities of the occasion include greetings and family gatherings, but most Muslim countries have called on their citizens to limit their movement and physical contact during this year's celebration. In Saudi Arabia, authorities have imposed a 24-hour curfew across the kingdom and banned Eid prayer assemblies. In the UAE as well, mosques remain closed for prayers on Eid.
In Germany, a church in the capital Berlin has opened its doors to Muslim worshippers unable to fit into their mosques under new social distancing rules. The Dar es Salaam Mosque normally welcomes hundreds of Muslims to its Friday services, but could only accommodate 50 people this time under COVID-19 restrictions. Details in this report.
Throughout the month of Ramadan, Muslims abstain from eating, drinking, and other desires from dawn to dusk. Families and friends gather to break their fast and attend communal prayers. But in Berlin, as in countries across the world, this year's celebrations have been affected. At such a time, Martha Lutheran Church stepped in to help by hosting Muslim prayers in Arabic and German.
It is a great signal and it brings joy amid Ramadan and joy amid this crisis. This pandemic has made us a community. Crises make people get together.
Places of worship reopened in Germany on May 4th after weeks of closures under the lockdown. But worshippers must maintain a minimum distance of 1.5 meters from one another. The church's pastor also took part in the service. Muslims noted the contrast of the church to the Islamic worship place but agreed that at the end it is also a house of God.
First, when you get into the church, was a strange feeling because of the music instrument and the photos. So it is something different from the mosque. But when you forget the small details, this is the house of the God, and at the end, so they are all the same.
This year, Muslims around the world are being urged to celebrate Eid al-Fitr at home as the holy month of Ramadan comes to an end.
Thousands of Chilean families hard hit by the economic effects of coronavirus pandemic received food boxes. Let's find out more in this report.
The World Health Organization has declared Latin America a new epicenter of the coronavirus pandemic. Regional governments are struggling with how to keep their populations in lockdown with few financial resources and weak social systems. Protest in Chile restarted this week with skirmishes between police and people denouncing the highest job losses in a decade. Council workers backed by soldiers began handing out 2.5 million food parcels in Santiago.
These boxes arrived to us yesterday at the last minute, and we're articulating with the municipal team to also get here, where there is a middle class which is also suffering the impact of the crisis, a health crisis that is turning into an economic crisis.
Local media says the food boxes will reach 70% of the country's most vulnerable population.
We hope this will be resolved soon. We all have to cooperate, all the families, the whole country, everybody. If we don't take the right measures, we're going to stay infected. So I thank them and welcome the resources they are giving us.
The government has announced a rescue package equivalent to more than 5% of GDP, but opposition politicians and protest leaders says it is insufficient.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has approved changes to the country's electoral law, allowing Russians to vote electronically or by mail in future polls. Backers of the new system say it will help stop the spread of the new coronavirus. But opponents say an electronic system will be easier to manipulate, making it hard for independent observers to notice irregularities. Russian media says the electronic system has undergone 4 tests in Moscow so far and not been hacked once. Putin unleashed a political storm in January when he suddenly proposed changes to the constitution. But until recently, he dismissed suggestions that he launched the overhaul of the country's basic law to extend his grip on power. Australia's western coast is bracing for a massive storm, which is expected to make landfall today. The Bureau of Meteorology forecasts torrential rain, strong winds and waves of up to 8 meters in some areas. The Bureau said severe weather is the result of the remnants of tropical cyclone Manga interacting with a cold front. It said this is a rare event, particularly due to the extent of the area affected and the possibility of multiple areas of dangerous weather. Department of Fire and Emergency Services Assistant Commissioner Jean Brumol said it will be a once-in-a-decade storm. He said normally storms in Western Australia come from the southwest, but this will come from the northwest. A severe weather warning has been in place for much of Western Australia. NASA astronauts Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken have completed their dress rehearsal for Wednesday's flight to the International Space Station. The mission, the first crewed outing from American soil in 9 years, will see the pair ride to orbit in a SpaceX Falcon rocket and Crew Dragon capsule. It is a demonstration of the new taxi service the U.S. Space Agency will be buying from the Californian firm. But a forecast released by the U.S. Air Force predicted a strong possibility of thick clouds, rain, and even thunder. If controllers are forced to scrub, the mission will come back on Saturday for a second try. We're taking a short break now, but stay tuned for more news. Iraq says Saudi companies are going to invest in its Okas gas fields following an agreement. Deputy Prime Minister Fuad Hussein said the Saudi commercial attaché will start soon in Baghdad. He also said Iraq appreciates Riyadh's decision to return the kingdom's ambassador to Baghdad. The Okas field in western Amba province and bordering Syria is Iraq's largest. Earlier in March, international oil companies with operations in Iraq agreed to reduce their output by 300,000 barrels per day. Now, China has dismissed concerns that proposed security laws in Hong Kong would harm foreign investors. In a statement, China's foreign ministry branch in Hong Kong urged countries to stop meddling in its affairs. It said Hong Kong's high degree of autonomy will remain unchanged and the interests of foreign investors will be protected. The ministry said the Chinese people will safeguard the national sovereignty and security. Earlier, bankers said the new law could lead to a drain of money and talent. The UK, Canada, and the US have expressed concern over the new proposed security law in Hong Kong. Now let's look at the weather from around the globe. This is all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news.